In times of a pandemic, it's the do-gooders who see society through. And I mean, our frontline workers who are really putting their lives on the line. And some people behind the scenes who've been at it for a while. And for a while, what I mean by for a while is some of them, their efforts are not exclusive to the pandemic. They've been at the social sector giving for a long, long time, but it's just that there's a special surge to their activities in this time of crisis. I'm very pleased to welcome onto the show Marzy Parakh. He's from Live to Give. Hi, Marzy. First
Hi,
question. I mean, are friends and family and colleagues safe and healthy?
you're all fantastic. Thanks so much. You're all doing great.
Marzy, I'm given to understand that you got involved or interested in the social sector as early as the age of 17. You want to tell me if you had an epiphany or, there was an event that caused it to occur?
So that's my whole belief, Rishi. Firstly, thank you for having me on and for this wonderful platform. Uh, my message always has been that you don't really need an epiphany or an event or a certain thing that should spark you to want to give back things. That is what I've always believed. So for me, a perfectly happy and a healthy life is the biggest driver for you to want to do things back. So I can't think of any particular event that made me want to do this, but I do know that when I was starting out much earlier, even than that age, I was always inclined to want to do stuff, give back to people, and I had my ways to want to do that. So I think in a large way, this is my calling. It always has been.
And before
Yeah.
you formally invented or inaugurated the Live to Give
Yeah.
NGO or not for profit, you
Yeah.
also helmed something known as the
Right.
Faith Foundation. You want to tell me about the Faith Foundation before we get into
Yes.
Live to Give? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, that's when, how it started is basically that since I was in just about early years of college, I always wanted to do something and I used to find various ways to do it. Like everyone else, I used to do this from my own savings, pocket money, whatever I had at that point. And it so happened that people got to know about me reaching out to so many people. So I would get a lot of calls, a lot of messages from people who would need help, and I realized at some point that I needed a formal institution or some kind of an entity to do it. So we registered an institution that was purely for the basis of being able to get help from others, and to do things formally. It wasn't on a scale as large as what we're doing with Live to Give. It was something during college years that we did. But the Faith Foundation primarily was started to help people with physical disabilities, to promote them for entrepreneurial opportunities. My calling has always been to do something that's permanent and to do something that's transforming for life. So we used to do chocolate making classes for visually impaired individuals. That was how this whole thing ever started. And we needed an account to take money from people to buy chocolates, to make sure that when those who were training do sell stuff, we would have an account to take the money into. So it was more of a necessity than really a formal NGO as such.
And you must have learned very, very early on that it's not very easy to try and get people with disabilities to start their own business. And for no other reason, Marzi, than you know to market it
Yeah,
takes such a lot of time and effort, doesn't it?
absolutely.
And that must have come
Absolutely.
as a big wake up call to you because you need the whole social media infrastructure. There's so much more that goes into it.
It does. So when we were around, social media wasn't as big as what it is right now. When I started doing this, uh, but what I a large great learning, like you rightly said, for me from that initiative was that we spent a lot of time to try and train them and to try and get them to sharpen up their skills. But obviously, that's when I was just starting out, and that was a learning that I had, where you need to actually put in more time and effort into making sure that once you've taught them, they have a line of trying to get this back and to be able to make this a sustainable source of livelihood for them. So that was a learning that I then incorporated into the next venture that I did much later, which was my restaurant, the Bombay Haveli, where we employed individuals with physical disabilities, and through the restaurant we started to train them to do entrepreneurial things. And that's when we put all those learnings into practice, and we made sure that not only did we teach them, but we would also uh, guarantee them a business in a certain way.
And if I'm not mistaken, part of what you were doing there was also to have a tent card, whereby if people wanted to reach out
Yeah,
directly to the specially challenged person or
yeah.
the disabled person, he or she could reach out right there from the restaurant table.
That was the purpose of doing it. The purpose of doing it is that there were restaurants who were employing those with disability, but their fate would be limited to the amount of days that they were employed, and that's how things would end. So that again doesn't resonate with what I've always wanted to do, unless it's permanent, unless it's uplifting for lifelong transformation. After they leave our site and after they're out of our contact, they shouldn't have to look elsewhere to get a source of livelihood. So that's why we thought we'd introduce them directly to customers, so that if they like something that they've tasted, that can be an automatic lifelong introduction for them.
Okay, now let's move to Live to Give. How old is Live to Give? When did you first start it? And then we'll go into the mechanics of it.
Yeah, sure. So Live to Give formally is about 2.5 years old, and the whole premise of why we started Live to Give was actually because of a problem that I faced all my years of when I was trying to raise help for the things I was doing, and it is pretty much a solution that I started initially for my own problem, and now it's become a community of about 600 odd people. So why we started Live to Give basically was in the early years when I was trying to get help for the cases that I was doing personally. It was really difficult for me to make those cases public. I used to use platforms like Facebook. That time, my only source to try and raise help for what I was doing was Facebook, because I had so many people reaching out to me and asking me for help. And at some point, I said that there's no way that I can do this out of my savings. So there had to be the need to get more like-minded people together. But I realized that Facebook was restricted to a certain audience only, and also there was a lot of people who wanted to do things that were not on Facebook, the elder generation, and it hadn't picked up the way it has picked up right now. So I thought there has to be a transparent way for me to get like-minded people together and showcase the kind of cases that are coming and be able to, if not ask them to come on board to help out, at least inspire them to see the kind of lives that they're living, and leave them with a thought about whether they want to do something about it. So the whole premise of wanting to start Live to Give was to get like-minded people to come together, and that's how it started. So today, what we do through Live to Give basically is to try and get anyone who wants to make a difference in the smallest way. What I realized over the years is that there are either the formal NGOs that are all and out NGOs where you have to go and do voluntary work, do the distribution, do the really difficult stuff, or then you just sit at home looking for opportunities to see how you can help or how you can participate. So I strongly believe that there has to be some middle path for someone who wants to sit at home, wants to do something but doesn't have the time commitment or the inclination to really go out and do that. And it could be a teacher, it could be a celebrity, it could be anyone. It does not have to be necessary for those who want to devote the rest of their lives to do groundwork. So Live to Give is exactly that. It is for anyone who wants to do the smallest act of kindness from sitting right out of their houses.
So let me get this straight. I mean, you have a number where anybody in need can reach out, which is basically a WhatsApp
That's
number.
right.
And then
That's
take
right.
me through what happens once somebody who has a dire need, whether it's ration, whether it's a health
Right.
problem, whether it's a
Right.
ventilator, anything,
Right.
puts a message on
Right.
that group. How does one take it
Right.
forward?
Right.
So first, let's start with the number,
How does one
please.
take it forward?
The
Yeah.
number.
So the number is 982008406.
I'm going to
That
repeat
is the
that.
number we're using. One number, right?
Nine
Yeah.
eight two zero zero eight four
Yes.
zero six zero. Yeah, is that it, Marzi?
That's right.
Super.
That's right.
Continue.
That
Continue.
is the number. That is it. That is it. That is it. So currently we're using that one number for both needs, also for those who want to put in appeals, and also for those who want to join the platform. How it works is, let's first talk about when an appeal comes forward. So let's say if someone puts an appeal on the 98200 number, immediately that appeal first goes to an internal verification team. So Live to Give internally has about 9 groups that the entire platform is divided into. So one of the groups is a verification group. These are volunteers who've signed up to volunteer time to do verifications. The first thing happens is the volunteer will call this number of the person who's put in the request, find out what his needs are. More often than not, we'll have someone physically go there, meet them, verify it, and do things like that. Once that happens, they will make a summary of the entire appeal of whatever the person is required to do. And this happens real time. This happens maybe in a matter of 15 minutes from the time the message first comes in. And the minute that happens, they do the verification. If they're convinced about it, they will put out that message on the main Live to Give group, which has combination of medical social workers, doctors, uh, all kinds of people, some decision makers, administrators, regular citizens. So what they would do is they would put out this message as an appeal. They would compulsorily put out the contact number, the verification details, all that, so that it's transparent for everyone to know who this person is. And then they would submit their request of what their appeal is. What happens then is that all the people who are on that group, so this usually goes up on about 3 or 4 different groups, because obviously we've hit the 250 member limit on groups. So this goes out to about 400, 500 people. And then what happens is people get together, and then we start discussing. People start asking questions about what their need is, and whether certain criteria have been met. And then citizens come together and they say, okay, this guy's deserving, let's do this. Or someone says, or maybe if the need is that someone needs a job, someone would be like, okay, I need someone to work for my restaurant or for my office. So it is just good people coming together to make a difference. It is not, we have appeals for things like someone has lost their family member, they want 1,000 rupees because they cannot afford to buy taxi fare to go from one city to the other city. So the need for this also arises because all the formal NGOs and establishments, Rishi, are those which require you to have orange ration card, Aadhaar card, all kinds of things. No one's going to give you 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees over the counter, even if you have to pay for your father's funeral. No one's going to do that when you ask for it. So this is something where, because we're citizens and we're not really so, we're okay to kind of give you that benefit of doubt. We'd be able to fund something instantly. And to great astonishment, the kind of money that we've raised, there's times when we raise 5 lakh rupees, 3 lakh rupees in 30 seconds, 60 seconds, because obviously it's the power of the kind of people who are on the platform. And it's just the compelling need that comes up automatically when you have all the information in front of you. You know who this person is, you have the option to call, pick up the phone, speak to them, understand their situation. Many times when you're talking to them, they're in tears, which doesn't happen in a conventional NGO. An NGO gives you, we are working for this cause, and then everything goes into a pool account. Obviously, there's administration charges. You don't know the end use of whether 100 rupees, who, although it must have definitely gone to the end use and the guy, but there is no way, and that is something that always holds people back. It is subconsciously something that always holds people back. So this removes any intermediary that there is. It lets people decide whether someone is deserving, how deserving they are, and things happen instantly. I mean, maybe down the course of this discussion, I will take you through a couple of cases that really redefine the goodness that people have and the compassion that we see in people. But these are stories that people don't talk about, and things that we don't come across in the media. When we see it, we see only, depression and violence. So maybe that will come up in the course of our conversation.
What is the volunteer strength, and are you able to pay some of the volunteers, or is it just completely,
No, no.
them volunteering
So it
their
is,
effort for a social
yeah,
cause?
it is completely them volunteering. So one of the things about Live to Give is that it is a zero fee platform. So we have not spent a single rupee since the inception of Live to Give, and we don't intend to. The whole point is this is a citizens movement. Whatever has to be spent collectively by citizens. If we do a drive someday, someone needs 5 t-shirts. There's times maximum that I've ever spent is for 10 t-shirts that we've bought. Sometimes so people know it's got a number on it, so people know that if they need to reach out to us, they need to reach out to us. But the platform is designed in a way where we would not have to spend anything. So it's absolutely voluntary. And also, I think that the financial contribution is a much smaller part than what else happens, because
I
yeah,
understand. Yeah, but for
because people
example, if a
actually,
kid
yeah,
if a
people,
kid needs to spend to go to let's say a low cost dwelling area or a slum to verify a particular case, it's taken for granted that they have to spend on
yeah,
the travel because that is their give back to society and their
it's take,
responsibility.
yeah. So I'll tell you, no, that's not how it works. So basically, what happens with donors? Okay, we have donors who also give money to Live to Give to do these kind of activities,
Okay.
but we don't take them. Yeah, we do that. So, but so when we have a volunteer, someone might say, okay, I can do this, but I'm not going to spend out of my pocket each time. So we do have donors who come on board and say, we will only fund this, because they see in a way, a minute, 1,000, 5,000 rupees of spending will actually get us to garner so many more cases and raise so much more help. So not necessarily that each one of them does it from their own pocket, but a lot of them consider their contribution to Live to Give in a sense that they would pay for their own verification work. 80-90% of the verification guys pay for their own travel.
Now, you did say that there are 9 groups. You want to
And
just
also,
take me
Rishi,
through? Yeah, sorry. You were saying?
yeah, I want to take it. Yeah, but I also want to add that the beauty of the platform is that we also on the group have so many people who already do the verification themselves. So let's say, for example, we have so many guys from the Robin Hood Army who are already on the group. So they already have their guys spread across. So it's really not so much of a cost each time. It is also so much to do with the kind of how resourceful the people are and the selection of who should be on the group is, that most times we literally have to just put a message, tag a certain person, and no one steps out of their house. The Robin Hood guy will call the guy in that area. He will then call his on-ground volunteer. He'll already have gone and checked. So literally, we have everything covered, and we do this, and we have people to do this all across the country, not only in Bombay. So we have tie-ups like this with other people from other cities, other than Robin Hood Army, who would go and do physical verification. So it just works beautifully. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that
So
you were also active during Cyclone Amphan, and your
yes,
volunteers were on the ground there. So obviously, the spread is much
yes, they
more
were.
than just Mumbai city or Maharashtra. You
Yes.
want to tell me about the groups in the Live to Give groups? You said there were 9 of them,
Yeah.
and how do you
Yeah.
bifurcate those groups, please?
Yeah. So, I strongly believe that that what makes a group effective or constructive depends more on the kind of the amount of notifications that are on the group. That is
Sure.
a very large factor of whether someone wants to be. So one thing that separates us from any other WhatsApp group, or why this is Live to Give and it doesn't work like a regular WhatsApp group, is because we are so particular, and we've thought so much about every practice and rule that is in place. So to start with, you can never post a forward on the group. When we say forward, obviously we don't mean jokes and everything that is out, but you cannot even say that, oh, this is an initiative, these guys are doing such a great job, because that qualifies as an information post for us. So information posts on Live to Give are necessarily to be broadcasted to members who have signed up for a broadcast list only. So we've kept those things in mind, and we've made groups separately for what each one of us needs to do. So let's say we start with the main group. The main group is a Live to Give group, which is the core group where we put in all the larger requests. So there is one group which is for requests that are upwards of 10,000 rupees in value, where it could be medical, hospitalization, whatever, any distress needs. So that is the first group. Then we have a Live to Give active, which is a more active group where you're allowed to have more notification exchange. You can the timings, each group has a timing, and you cannot post messages after that particular time. So the active group has a longer time span that you can post messages at, and it is mainly for ration distribution. And more than just ration distribution, that group was started for ration distribution primarily to those who are specially abled. We thought that during the pandemic there was a lot of people reaching out to help for so many people, but we thought those with specially disabled segments were, it was more difficult for them to reach out for help, more difficult for them to walk to ration shops doing that stuff. So we thought we need something dedicatedly focused for that cause. And also, the kind of people we have on that group are visually impaired social workers who themselves go and source. They know who these guys are, they've known them for years. And that is the kind of verification that happens. So it's not just someone saying, oh, this person needs ration. It comes from a very validated source. So that's the active group. The third group is the Live to Give SOS group. The SOS group started actually only 4 months back on account of the pandemic. This is something that I think is most interesting. What happens on the SOS group is we realized during the pandemic that suddenly COVID cases had piled up, and whenever someone would call the 1916 number, or they would try and get an admission at the hospital, more often than not, they would be days of waiting for them to know whether hospital beds are available. They would never hear back. Obviously, because of the supply demand mismatch, and government obviously is going to take time to build that capacity. So what we did is about 30 of us got together on a WhatsApp group. We called it the Live to Give SOS group. And all we did was that we divided all the hospitals between the 30 of us. So what happened is every time someone wanted to need a hospitalization bed or an ambulance, they would contact one of us. We would put up their details on the group, and the 30 of us in about 7 or 8 minutes would be able to tell you the availability of every single hospital bed in the city. Over and above that, we would also have volunteers who were designated to only coordinate with ambulances. So there would be guys then. So then the next question to the family. So one of us would be constantly in touch with the guy on WhatsApp, whoever the patient's relative is. He would say, "Oh, this is our hospital choices." We would put it out. Then he would say, "Oh, do you also need an ambulance?" And then we would all coordinate for an ambulance. So literally in the times of a calamity, the family member would have to do nothing but just send us a WhatsApp message. He would know which hospitals. He would get the admission process. And that was something that I thought saved a lot of lives. I remember clearly there was one incident of a gentleman who had been to 11 hospitals that day
Wow.
with his father physically to 11 hospitals. And the doctors told him, stop trying. There's no way you're going to be able to save him today because, this is the situation. And this was more for cases where people needed ventilators, ICU beds, dialysis, comorbidities. All those guys were the guys who were more in distress. And it took us about less than 45 minutes or an hour at the max to be able to from the time we got that message, because also on the group what we made sure was we had key people from hospitals on that group. We had people who would be able to to take exceptional cases on priority. So there again, the profiling of the people we put there made a large difference. So I thought this was something that did really great service during the pandemic. So the third group is the Live to Give SOS group. We also use this group for medicines. We have the life-saving medicines that these days are really hard to find in terms of emergency. So we use that group mainly for hospitalizations and for medicine sourcing only. The fourth group then is the Live to Give follow-up group. We call it the Here to Stay group. So another interesting thing about Live to Give is that we believe that once we aid someone through the platform, we don't want to just forget about them and end it at a one-time donation. That
Sure.
is a large value that is imbibed into why we started Live to Give. So what we try to do there is that during the pandemic, that group was more about kind of being the intermediary between those who we got hospitalized and the relatives, because there were times when they would try to reach the hospital and they wouldn't get updates about how their families are doing. So we would have again doctors from hospitals on that group, volunteers following up with the hospital. So in the beginning, it was something that people were really shocked about, because these absolute strangers who would get calls from our volunteers every day updating them about how, so they would actually be shocked. They would be like, boss, you're calling me every day to give me updates. Like, is this a service? Is this something we have to pay for? And people couldn't believe that there could be these group of people who would call you 7 days a week, sometimes 5 times a day, to just tell you about how your relative was doing after actually first facilitating their hospitalization and all of that. So that was something that was extremely fulfilling. But more than that, the purpose of this group in the long run is to kind of be there for anyone who doesn't have anyone to look after them. We have cases like someone who's visually impaired. He has two mentally unfit sisters. Obviously he wants to work, he wants to earn a living, but there's no way he can leave them at home. So there's thousands of cases like this, people who are really want to make a living but not able to support themselves because of a critical illness or a family condition. So the purpose of this group is to tell them that, hey, we're going to be there for you for life. Any medical expenses, financial expenses, you want us to call you and we're going to take care of it. So that is the Here to Stay follow-up group. The fifth group is the verification group that we spoke about some time back. Volunteers there would only go and verify cases and find out whether these cases are legitimate, because on a platform that is as active as having tens of messages every couple of seconds, it's not possible that that we just let people put those cases without them actually being verified. So that is the fifth group. The other group then is the Live to Give Gems group. The Gems group is basically a kind of informal support group that we run only for those who want a listening ear or who want to speak their mind. It is basically for anyone who just wants to open up to a stranger. Gems is stands actually for giving, G for giving, E for eating, M for music, and S for spirituality. So what we try and do in the GEMS group is we restrict conversations to these four topics only, and we have some of our core members, mentors who are active on that group, and basically it's a fun group for people to just unleash themselves. The eighth group is the Live to Give Lead by Example group. This is another really interesting group. The Lead by Example group is for children of Live to Give members who want to start out early their journey of giving. So it's basically a group for to teach kids the right values right from when they've started young, and to give them exposure to the kind of things their parents have been doing, and get them on the right track. So these are kids aged between 13 and 19, and they are taught to do things under the supervision of their parents and mentors from the Live to Give group. And primarily, their role is more to do with social media and some kind of verification in the supervision of parents. So that is the Lead by Example group. And the last group is our Live to Give Back group. That is the only group that isn't live yet. We are doing some kind of there's a lot of data analysis that has to happen to get that live, because that group is about everyone who has been aided through the Live to Give platform to
Mm.
actually now give back to others and return the favor of the kindness that was extended to them. So that we're hoping goes live sometime mid-September, because obviously we're still doing our impact analysis and getting that data out, because there's lakhs of people that need to be get caught in touch with, and got them on the platform. So there's work going on there. But broadly, these are the 9 groups, and all your roles and responsibilities are divided between these groups.
For those of you watching or listening, it's 9820084060. Live to Give. So please get in touch if you're willing to volunteer your service, if you have a special need, or if you're a donor. All of them under that umbrella. I'm really really happy that the most vulnerable sections of society, which is senior citizens and children, are something that are reached out to and helped. Let's talk about inspirational cases. A 2.5-year-old child who fought liver cancer, a 70-year-old senior citizen abandoned by her son, or anything that you'd like to add and tell me about inspirational cases that Live to Give has facilitated and helped them.
I mean, there's so many of them, but there's one or two that I think absolutely stand out, which need a special mention. One of them can be the case of a lady who was lying on the streets. She was mentally unstable. She was HIV positive. She was lying next to a puddle of water on the streets for about 5 days, and several people came to have a look at her. And people gave up because they said, "Oh, it's pandemic, and no hospital is going to take her." And she was suffering there, for days at a stretch. We also realized later that she was paralyzed from waist below. And someone just put out this message on the group, and I think it was not even about half an hour until when volunteers ended up going visiting her. Obviously, we immediately got her hospitalized, got her admitted, and then people got together. They funded the whole treatment because it was a private hospital. The regular guys weren't ready to take her. People got together to fund her, and she didn't make it, unfortunately. And volunteers also got together to actually go and even do the last rites for someone who was an absolute stranger. So I thought that was extremely touching, and that really shows the goodness of what people do. Another case that I can think of that is really inspirational is the case of an individual who lost his way at outside Kurla terminus. This was an individual who, a volunteer reported that there's this person who's sitting outside the station and crying because he was about 70, 75 years old. And they reported that he was crying because he was maybe not socially stable, autistic, and someone robbed him of all his documents and money, and he wanted to go back home. The trains were not functional. He didn't know what to do, and this was one day before the cyclone was predicted here in Bombay, and the volunteers were um, concerned about how he's going to do and who's going to take care of him. And the minute that this came out on the group, once again, people rushed to look after him, and people went to meet him. They gave him, instantly gave him, obviously, clothes and food and whatever. But let's understand, during the pandemic, one of the largest issues that people have faced, mainly with the destitutes, is that there isn't an institution or a facility that is ready to take someone inside. So all this while that these guys had places to go and there were good people doing work, in this time specifically, if you're on the road or if you are, not in a position to make it, you cannot even get any medical aid. So that was a challenge. So we had a volunteer who convinced one of his institutions that he was working for to take this person in for some time. We took him in for some time. Uh, what was really inspirational about this case is that this service lasted almost about 25 days, where people would go and meet this person because he was not opening up, he wasn't talking. So people had to actually counsel him, find out what his where he belonged to, who his family was. So obviously the meals and the food and the shelter is not even something that is great anymore at Live to Give Back, because that happens every alternate day. But what was inspiring here is people, when they spent 20 days, met him every day, an absolute stranger, spent time with him. And then they put out a post on Facebook with his picture and said, "This is a guy, he's lost. He says he's from a certain place, Pardohi. And, we want to get him reunited with his family. Does anyone know?" And to our fortune, someone responded back to that post. They responded back, they got his whereabouts. And the whole exercise of convincing him to go back, getting his tickets, at this time it was impossible to get his tickets organized. So we had some instrumental people on the group who pushed his ticket forward on the train. uh, and this was something that was unimaginable. No one assumed that someone on the street who had lost everything would be able to get reunited with his family through this service. So things like that. These are two cases which I think were really going above and beyond from regular incidents that happen every day. And there's lots more, Rishi. I can go on.
Correct.
Another
Marzi,
case that I can think of that is, yeah.
before we come back to another case, it's wonderful
No,
to
go
know
ahead.
that
Yeah.
people from the bureaucracy and social servants, civil servants, are also reaching out and helping Live to Give. I believe we have an assistant commissioner of income tax who's very active and who's really spurring you on to give back more.
Yeah. So your voice is breaking up. I couldn't hear that. I think it's my connection, if I'm not mistaken. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I believe there are people in the public,
Okay.
there are bureaucrats and people in civil society who are reaching out to help. For example, there's an assistant commissioner of income tax who's part of Live to
Yeah.
Give and who's doing a stellar job.
Yeah. So we've been fortunate to that extent. We do have, members from civil service, members from other departments who have been extremely, instrumental in getting our things done. So one such incident is Mr. Vaibhav Jain. Mr. Vaibhav Jain is commissioner of income tax, who is extremely active and extremely instrumental in a lot of things that we do. Uh, this reminds me of peak pandemic, when there were cases from Bihar, individuals here from Bihar, from Darbhanga specifically, who had lost their source of livelihood, and there was absolutely no ration, nothing available to them. So that's when so the civil services also has their little set of people who get together and do good work. So one such incident is where they had a helpline number where they would get cases for people from Bihar who were stranded in Bombay, and this was a government helpline, if I'm not mistaken. And those numbers would then be diverted to Vaibhav, who would then divert them to us at Live to Give. And for about a month or a month and a half at stretch, we actually made another subgroup only for these Bihar-related cases, where we would go and distribute ration every day. When that was not enough, we actually started a feeding service where we would get cooked meals to be reached out to them. And Weber was also extremely instrumental, because there's lots of times where we need help with the police for facilitating the social distancing norms. There are times when there are things that are derogatory to what the animal laws are. There are times when I remember there was a poster that was put up that is, against what the actual laws are. It was a violation of the animal laws, and we highlighted that to Vaibhav on the group, and in a couple of hours he made sure that those posters were taken off. So uh, that is what is the beauty of this platform. There are people from every segment of society, and they go above and beyond their duties and their responsibilities uh, to do stuff. Also because, Rishi, when the platform is interactive and you see others doing this kind of stuff, the regular stuff is it's just so inspiring that you see people going above and beyond, and you just feel like, boss, this is the least that I can do. So over the years, the bar now for Live to Give is at a place where when a new person comes to the platform for the first time, he thinks like, who are these people? And it's not 10, 20, 50 people. It's 300 or 600 who are doing this kind of work. So you can imagine the quantum of cases that get addressed on a daily basis.
What drives you, Marzi? I mean, you started early, you're in your early 30s now, you started at 17 in the social sector. That's very early for somebody to start off. I mean, I know that the traditional notion is I'm going to give back to society when I'm a senior citizen, when I'm 60 and retired, or, perhaps if I have a problem of my own. You don't belong to either bracket. I mean, your day job is you're a restaurateur, a successful one of that. But when people your age could have easily been going out and partying and having a great time, you're devoting all your energies to this. Is it because you're inspired by a particular individual? What drives you?
Yeah. So like I said, even in the beginning, what drives me is a very happy and a successful life. And I like to keep reiterating that I don't believe personally that an illness or watching someone else's misery or suffering should be a driver for anyone. Because because most people I know do get onto the path because of instances like that, and then their service is restricted to only helping that segment of people. Whereas when you start off because out of gratitude and out of just doing it because have so much to thank the universe for, your approach is totally different. So what drives me now, honestly, Rishi, is also this great responsibility of over at least 100 calls and appeals that I get. I'm talking about them coming to me, forget Live to Give aside. But because over the last 2 decades, people know about the kind of work, I'm literally a go-to guy for people when someone wants to do, some donation, or someone wants to help someone, or someone wants to get help. So now it's become more of a responsibility that's driving me. So if I'm unwell for a certain day, or if I can't be active on the group, it means, so many people will get delayed responses. So it is the calls, the messages, the appeals that keep driving me, because I am someone who cannot turn a blind eye, knowing that there is someone who's dependent on me. And I have it in my power to be able to help them, and I'm not doing enough for them. So now it's the responsibility that drives me. Initially, it was the gratitude.
Well, there is somebody who was living in a shanty in a slum, and I've got to say this: his entire family was under quarantine, and he was taking care of his father, who had to get a dialysis done. This is a dialysis patient who was getting having to go and get dialysis done twice a day, and during the pandemic, it just wasn't possible. And Marzi reached out. He reached out to Marzi personally, and Marzi made sure that dialysis did happen. So, there are many instances we can go on and on and on. I'd like, before we sign off, for you to give out the website, an email ID, and the best way for people who want to contribute, which is donors as well as volunteers. Just to repeat that, where they can reach out.
Sure, thanks. So the best way to do that right now is to just send us a simple WhatsApp message on our helpline number, which is 98200846060. That is the number that we're using right now for those who want to come in to volunteer, as well as those who are reaching out for help. I'll repeat it. It's 98200846060. And they can alternatively also email us on jointheforce@livetoGiveIndia.org. That is mainly only for volunteers. They can email us at jointheforce@livetoGiveIndia.org.
Super. Listen, keep up the great work, my friend, and well, you live to give. That itself is a very strong statement. Thank you, Marzi. Cheers.
Thanks, Rishi. Pleasure to see you. Thank you. See you.